Hi, hello everyone. I said that we will be discussing about the operations frontier, and I will share a video on this. So we did discuss about operations frontier a bit in in the class last Wednesday. So let me continue with what we have discussed and just give you an overview of what exactly this operations frontier is all about. Right. So when we discussed about Operations Frontier, I did mention that there are three major things that you want to understand. One is that Operations Frontiers are usually drawn um, with either uh, two of the QCDF elements, right? With one of them on the y-axis and the other on the x-axis. And in general, we usually represent cost on one of the axis and the other the QDF on the other things. So in general, you can say that it is something that is drawn with QDF versus cost, right? So this is the in general process that is followed for operations frontier. The second thing that you need to remember is that operations frontier is drawn for an industry and not for a particular firm, right? And not for a firm. Now, here you can make one small exception, especially when you're looking for something like a manufacturing plant or even in services, if you're restaurants. What you can do is, because this is operations frontier is generally used for benchmarking, if you want to do this for one particular firm, you can use data from different plants or different locations and compare them with one another. So if you want to draw this for one particular firm, the blue dots, as we can see over here, would be representing each plant or each particular location or restaurant, and that's how it is usually done, right? So the third thing that I have mentioned was that operations frontier in the operation on operations frontier, firms which lie on the frontier are market leaders, right? So this is what we had discussed. Now, with this particular thing in context, as we can see over here, we have taken an example of responsiveness on the y-axis and cost efficiency on the x-axis. Here, responsiveness is a proxy for your delivery time, right? So as we are representing over here, and as you can see over here, higher the responsiveness means that lower is the delivery time, and lower the responsiveness means higher is the delivery time. The same way, higher the cost efficiency means that the cost is lower, and lower the cost efficiency means higher is the cost, right? Now, here we can clearly see that there are three blue dots which are on the operations frontier. The first one, which is the operations frontier 1, and D, C, and E are the market leaders according to this. Now, as I had taken the example of logistics industry in the class, in logistics industry, we had mentioned that if I were to take FedEx and India Post, something like D would be my FedEx and something like E would be my India Post, right? This is what we had discussed. Now here, what we are saying is that a firm like India Post has very high cost efficiency, but it has relatively low responsiveness. While on the other end, a company like FedEx has very high responsiveness, but its cost efficiency is very low, right? Now, given that we mentioned that in the logistics industry, these are not the only two firms which are market leaders. There are firms which can operate in positions like C, where I provide good cost efficiency as well as reasonably well responsiveness, but probably not as high as FedEx, and the same way not as cheap as somebody like India Post, right? Now these firms can also be considered as market leaders. Now, what about those firms which are inside this operations frontier? Now, what we can say is that these firms which are inside the operations frontier can be considered as those firms which are not doing the best that they can do, right? So what does that mean, not doing the best that they can do? It means that given the resources that they have, given the current technology that is the best in this particular industry, they still have some things that they have not figured out, which can take them onto the operations frontier. There will always be some kind of firms which you will be operating in this logistics industry, which might be burning a lot of cash but not providing enough responsiveness, right? So those firms are firms like A, B, and the other blue dots that you're seeing over here. Now, over here, as you can see, when we are talking about a firm A which is aspiring to move towards C, the firm which is in this particular position, which probably is one of the, let's say, startups in this particular logistics industry, can decide to go any particular direction, right? So it could either go this direction, it could go this direction and try to become a competitor for India Post, or it can even go in this direction and become a competitor for FedEx. But here it has chosen to go in this particular path, that is from A to B to C, right? Now, as we can see over here, the line that is representing over here and the corresponding slope of this particular line represents the strategy of the firm or relative strategic priority. Why do I call this as a relative strategic priority? Because the firm is choosing to operate in this particular space. That is a space where it would want to provide reasonable responsiveness at reasonable cost efficiency. Now, by doing this particular choice, it is trading off other things. And we have discussed about trade-offs and discussed about why that is similar to strategy of a firm, right? An organization deciding to operate in this particular space means that there is a strategy around this particular thing, right? Now, the same way, any particular firm which is inside this operations frontier, and if you want to look at the distance between this particular firm and the operations frontier, that represents, as we can clearly see over here, the operational ineffectiveness of the firm. That means it still has at least this much effectiveness that it can bring into the system, right? Now, as you can clearly see from this particular curve, there is another curve called as operations frontier 2 drawn over here. Now, what does this operations frontier 2 mean? Please remember that operations frontier is like a snapshot at a particular point in time. That means that if for a given kind of technology, for a given kind of resources that are there, a firm being on this operations frontier is supposedly doing the best it can, right? And hence we call that as market leader. Now, as technology changes, as things improve, as things become more and more optimized, the operations frontier definitely moves in the upward right side direction, right? Now, think of this, like, for example, think about India Post and the kind of services it was providing about 10 years back. Now, if you take the example of Speed Post, India Post was charging almost the same price earlier, and right now, if you consider inflation and other things, the relative cost that India Post was charging for Speed Post was more or less the same. But if I had used Speed Post about 10 years back, 20 years back, you will definitely know that Speed Post would probably take about 7 days, 8 days to reach the destination. But now, the speed of that particular firm, India Post, especially the Speed Post provided by India Post, has definitely increased. So what does it mean? It means that at the same cost efficiency, what India Post did is move from this particular location to, let's say, this particular location. So what has happened over here? The cost efficiency remained the same while the responsiveness of the firm has increased. Now, it might so happen that the firm could have chosen to remain operating at the same cost efficiency and providing higher responsiveness, or it could have said, no, I would provide the same responsiveness, but I would make these services more cheaper for the firm, for the customers. So then what would it do? It would probably move in this particular direction, right? So where what is happening over here, the cost efficiency is increasing. That means the cost or the price that the customers pay for this is reducing, while the responsive remains the same. right? So this is how organizations together in a particular industry get affected with changes which are happening. Now, the next important question that we would want to answer over here is, how does the operations frontier move forward? The operations frontier moves forward because of changes which happen in either technology or in general with the management principles which are adopted by different firms. Now, taking an example of technology, we know that how Netflix has disrupted the overall video on demand industry, especially through the digital subscription model. Earlier, Blockbuster was considered as one of the biggest companies which was taking the overall video rental business by storm, right? Then came Netflix, started digitizing everything and completely revolutionized the world, right? So the cost at which some of these services were able to provide the choice to the customers significantly came down after Netflix started investing in digital, right? Now that's the reason why, as of now, Blockbuster is almost bankrupt, and they've started closing their all their brick and mortar stores where they used to give these rentals, right? The same way, if you look at Amazon versus other brick and mortar stores, Amazon also through technology brought in a lot of changes. Same way, using management principles, several organizations brought about a lot of change. And no better example than Toyota, which is considered to be one of the hallmarks of bringing about changes in the quality, and they also introduced to the world the principles related to lean management. We will discuss that more as we go forward in this particular course. Another example is from Walmart. Walmart brought in this particular concept of cross docking. Cross docking is that particular process where they wanted to reduce the overall time spent by uh, the products in the warehouse, so that the products which are immediately to be consumed or which the customers have a lot of demand directly go from the supplier's location to the or the distributor's location directly to the retailer's location, right? So this particular process is called as cross docking. You can read more about this online, and I can also share some material on this particular thing, right? So this is how organizations changed and brought about this management principle, which brought a lot of changes, right? So for example, cross docking brought about the change in terms of responsiveness. Did this increase the cost for the organization? Very less, right? Now, what about lean management? Lean management again brought in the improvement in quality at almost low zero cost, right? So that's how organizations change. So I hope you understood what Operations Frontier stands for and how it is actually used for you to actually benchmark with firms which are there in the industry. And the beauty of that, it is not only showing about the benchmarking, but it is also showing about the different strategies firms use and operate in this particular industry. Okay, I hope you understood this, and if you have any doubts, please reach out to me on this particular thing. Thank you.